All right, hey everybody. Sorry that we were slightly late, and also for the abrupt start to the stream. There have been some knock-on technical problems from when I had the technical problems with Jackson Wheat. Basically, I lost my place in this 50-minute mess of a video, so I've been trying to scramble to figure it out for the last, you know, 20 minutes or so. So that's a thing. Maddie, how are you today?
I'm doing all right this Tuesday. We set a heat record here in Oklahoma City of 111 degrees of freedom.
Yikes! That it is
So
significantly cooler in Tucson.
I don't like you then.
Yeah, it's only 104
So,
here, and it's very dry.
hey, team, everybody, there's a lot of places on planet Earth surviving a heat wave right now.
Yeah.
So stay hydrated. Try to stay cool. If you're in a place like the UK, swamp coolers are a great thing. Or if you can get down into a cellar or a basement, that's a great place to stay cool.
And all you
Um,
really need for a swamp cooler is a fan and a tub of ice.
yep, that's all you need. And you can make your tub of ice even colder by adding either rubbing alcohol or salt.
Yes.
And then you can dip rags in that water, that really cold ice water, and like put it on the back of your neck. Feels so good.
You know, one time in the Navy, we had our roving guy go and grab some sodas for everyone. We also had
Hmm.
him steal a bunch of ice and salt from the mess decks, and
Excellent
we
choice.
had like slush sodas during that watch.
Yeah.
It was very nice, very nice. Um, yeah, because the Navy will sell you cans of cola from vending machines on an
Yeah.
aircraft carrier. It's like, okay, thanks, I guess. Um,
Yeah. That
and
one week I got to spend on a carrier, I could buy Starbucks. I was like, "What is happening?"
yeah, actually, my ship we installed a Starbucks like coffee making setup that
Yeah.
the money went to the MWR program, which is Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. But like they had to install a special like power setup and a special transformer just for the coffee maker because it used a voltage that we didn't actually produce on the ship normally.
Oh,
So
okay.
we actually had to change the ship's drawings to install a we had to pay for it coffee machine for fancy coffee.
For fancy coffee. I love it. Don't
Um
worry, you can get ship coffee for free,
oh yeah, it's very
but
free.
yeah, that's very free.
It's also of questionable quality. I know because I've made it.
Yeah, swap that P for a T.
Yeah. Actually at one point we started to run out of caffeinated coffee and I was instructed, I was like, hey, start adding a little bit of decaf. And I was like, people will notice. No, they won't. I absolutely guarantee you they will notice, and there will be like riots.
There will be a riot. Yeah.
Yeah, the entire military just runs on stimulants.
Yep.
Anyway, that's not really what we're here for. We are here mostly to talk about Raw Matt, but we are going to end up getting to Matt Powell, I think, because this we don't have much of this. I just do want to put a quick few things out there. Last week, I shared a link for a fundraiser for Boots the Cats. That is Vishanti's cat. I have bad news. Unfortunately, Boots has passed away. She
Mm.
passed away a couple days after that link went out. That of course Vishanti still has those vet bills from her treatment. So, but those of you who donated, just want to let you know. Unfortunately, Boots is no longer with us. So please, if you follow Vishanti on Twitter or Necretiate, and so does Vishanti, because veterinarians are expensive.
Veterinarians are expensive, and
Um,
we love our fur babies
we
or
do.
other pet babies.
Yeah, actually, I had my one of my pet lizards passed away a few days before Boots did. So it's been a rough time, and for the circle of Dabber Dino like supporters and friends and whatnot when it comes to pets. So,
Yeah.
but that's okay. You know, she was old, and she was about as old as they usually get. So, anyway,
Mm.
let's talk about the what we do here. So this is despite the fact that I've been going for 5 minutes without actually playing any raw or yeah, this is raw Matt stuff.
Yeah.
We are actually here to talk about raw Matt getting basically everything that he possibly can wrong. And we have a drinking game that we do for it. So we take a drink whenever we get something that's just too stupid, which is our most common one because quite frankly, most of the things that Ramat says are stupid enough that I need some kind of like lubrication in my brain lest it grind to a halt.
Yeah.
Let's see. We also take a drink if he gets something right, but he can't be just quoting someone. He has to actually get it right on his own. And this is always our least frequent drink option. We will also drink if Matt says something about the National Socialist German Workers' Party, any leaders thereof or prominent members, or the various activities that they got up to, especially in the 1930s and 1940s. We sometimes will just call that the Godwin's Law drink, which technically it doesn't always apply because he's not usually comparing what someone else is saying directly to some bit of rhetoric or action from the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He's usually using it in a slightly different manner, which technically doesn't fall under the definition of Godwin's Law, but whatever, we're being kind of loosey-goosey here with the terms. We also will take a drink if he tells a joke that doesn't land. Or, now this is primarily for Matt Powell, but I think we'll be getting to some Matt Powell during today's show. If the Columbine shooting comes up, we also take a drink for that. Because, my goodness, that is something that Matt Powell really likes to talk about, even though it doesn't actually bear on whether or not evolution is true. Like, at best, it's an argument from consequences. So if it were true that teaching evolution caused school shootings, that would not be an argument that evolution isn't true. Right? It's the same thing as like, don't go to the doctor because if he diagnoses you with cancer, you'll have to undergo unfortunate, painful cancer treatments. It's like, okay, well, just not going to the doctor doesn't make me not have cancer. That's not how it works. I either have it or I don't. You might as well get down to the truth of the matter. Anyway, we will also take a drink for stories that didn't happen, which is basically our creationist in question, in this case, one of the Matts, basically mistaking the arguments they have with hypothetical people while taking a shower for real life events. It's more of a Kent Hovind thing, but it still comes up with these other creationists. Also, there are a couple ways that you guys can get us to drink. For one thing, if you guys super chat with one of the channel-specific emojis representing a kaiju, like Godzilla, Mothra, or King Ghidorah, we will take a drink. Also, every once in a while, my phone will make a kaiju sound, which will cause us to trigger a sort of surprise drink. Now, lately, because of the extra noise canceling I'm having to do so that here in the summer in Arizona I can keep the AC on, it's not really coming through very well for my phone, so I now have a program that I can just cause to activate a Godzilla sound, which is, it'll sound like this, which, Maddie, I don't think you'll be able to hear it, sorry. So if that happens, we'll take a drink.
You are correct, I can't hear that.
Yeah, sorry. I only have so many solutions to this problem.
That's okay.
So let's see. I believe the last thing is, and this is something I actually started here on Matt with Maddie, which is if you super chat anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, or in that sort of realm, we will take a drink. But you have to be careful because YouTube likes to censor the more obvious ways to say that. Now, the reason for this is because they like to copyright claim every video using anything ever produced by them, no matter how fair use it is. So, I think that covers it, and now, almost 10 minutes into the show, let's actually hear from the subject of our show, Ramat.
Okay, though I do want to say something really fast. Team, feel free to play along in this drinking game with us, but also know that, like, I'm playing with water. There's a myriad of reasons why people don't consume alcoholic beverages. And it's just, this is for fun. Yeah. So, and hang out and have fun with us, and be safe.
Yep. There are actually, I think of my guests, the only one who regularly consumes alcohol while on the show, besides me, is Erica.
Well, I would. Right. I am.
There are extenuating circumstances.
At the time of this stream, I am now 34 weeks pregnant.
There you go.
So I used to drink with you. Anyway.
I'm sure you will someday again.
Someday soon. I'm very excited about it because this will be much better for me if I'm a little better lubricated. This will be more tolerable.
Seriously. All right, Here we go.
We're not related to apes. You're not a monkey.
Just out of the bat, I mean, you are, but let's hear his reasoning.
Yeah, let's hear it.
If you think you are, go up to the next person or a family and just say, "Hi, I believe I'm an ape. I'm related to monkeys. Nothing means anything."
Okay, I'm going to take a drink because I feel like I'm related to apes and monkeys doesn't then follow through to nothing means anything?
Yeah, I had an immediate, oh gosh, back when I taught for the Navy, we had like grading abbreviations, right? And oftentimes somebody would say like, this happens, therefore this is the next thing. And I would write DNF a lot, so does not follow. And that was my first thought there.
Yep.
Also, please don't approach random strangers. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Why are you bothering people?
Don't just approach people and be like, "Hey, I'm a monkey." It's weird, even if it is true, but it's just a weird thing to do. Like,
yeah.
But on the other hand, like, I guess with like people if you were like, "Oh, hey, I'm an ape," I think most of them will just be like, "Yeah,
cool story, bro." Like, yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah. I don't think he understands that the game we're playing here is the Sesame Street game of one of these things is not like the others, right? Like, if you have a human, an ape, and a fern, right? Like, the human, the ape are more similar to each other than either the human is to the fern or the ape is to the fern.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that's meant by related, you know?
Well, the thing is, though, in terms of evolutionary biology, it does actually mean that there is you can trace it down to a literal common ancestral population that literally is the physical ancestor of both groups. So there is that. On the one hand, you can sort of play the Carolus Linnaeus game of these things are in these categories that don't necessarily mean ancestry.
Yeah.
And creationists are usually okay with most of that. But there is the common ancestry, which they're usually not okay with, which, interestingly enough, for an upcoming video, well, probably video series, maybe one, I don't know, I actually started slogging my way through Systema Naturae, which does not apparently have an English translation online. So I've been slogging through a scan of the Latin 10th edition.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's not been the most fun thing I've ever done.
No, that doesn't sound like fun.
But fortunately, I got to the most important part was just the definition of aves, which ends up just being on page 12 with nice, like, single word Latin phrases or sometimes a few words. So
nice.
Like that wasn't too bad.
Okay.
But yeah, don't try to slog through Carolus Linnaeus Systema Naturae in Latin. It's not fun. It's just kind of a nightmare. Don't do it. All right, here we go.
Yeah. And if you can say that with a straight face and believe it, they've really indoctrinated you well at school. Because
I can't say it and believe it because I'm a dinosaur, but Maddie, could you say that with a straight face? You're an ape and you're related to monkeys?
Yeah, like, nested hierarchies are a thing, man.
Yeah.
Like, I could tell you how I'm related to that fern in that example, like, we're both eukaryotes, like, is our common ancestor way farther back? Absolutely. But like, this is, what is it? This is the argument from incredulity that young Earth creationists like. I want to propose that as a logical fallacy. Just, I'm not actually going to make a point. I'm just going to point to something and laugh at it and say it's absurd.
Yeah, well, that's another thing about this whole argument is it's just an argument from incredulity. It's like, I find this unbelievable. Okay, dude.
Yeah.
No one's basing what they believe on what raw Matt believed, because let's remember, this is a man who finds it incredible that, science exists, basically. But he finds it credible that maybe food is just optional for living organisms.
Yeah.
Because remember, this man took seriously the idea of breatharianism. And that's not according to me. That's according to him in his own book about how to become immortal by following his diet. And no, none of that is a joke. He self-published a book about how following his raw vegan diet will make you not age or die.
Yeah.
Given the fact that I've seen raw Matt visibly age and he looks like he's on death's door, I'm skeptical of his health claims.
I'm skeptical. Also, there's nothing wrong with like self-publishing, especially for like really niche stuff or whatever. Yeah. But that just doesn't mean it's right.
So, So look, here's the thing with self-publishing. Self-publishing doesn't tell you if something that something is bad, right?
Mhm.
However, a lot of really bad books are self-published.
Yeah, that's the thing. There are really great books that are self-published. Listen, every single one of the Tinglers is self-published, technically. Are you familiar with Chuck Tingle?
I am not.
Oh, okay. He writes ridiculous erotic fiction.
Oh,
And
that's not a
like
genre I spend a whole lot of time in.
like trans dinosaur Harry Potter.
Oh, I think I saw the cover for something like that.
Yeah. So it's it's not what I read in my spare time, but the titles always give me a chuckle.
There's a guy who uses a pen name, it's a feminine pen name, but he writes a bunch of like dinosaur erotic fiction, and every once in a while, like paleontology Twitter will share a few covers of these, like Ravished by the T-Rex, and it's just like, oh my goodness.
Amazing.
Why?
Listen, so these are examples of amazing self-published books, right?
Go read Ravished by the T-Rex, not whatever Matt's book is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, I just want to. Anyway, we should listen to Matt and not talk about.
We have a member milestone chat first, which is from Dark Law Dragon, who's been a member for 5 months at the Tetrapod level. Which guy, by the way, guys, if you want to join the channel, there is a link. Says Ba Weep Gra Na Weep Nini Bong. I don't really know what that means, but it does have a Godzilla emoji, which means we will drink for it.
Drink.
Which actually, I feel like I missed a few drinks that I had, so I'm just gonna up the drink counter by another couple because I'm pretty sure I screwed that up.
Just take a few, get yourself in a good mood for this.
Almost impossible. Chat and Maddie actually put me in a good mood for these, but like Matt puts me in a terrible mood for this. It's a very like conflicted thing inside my brain. All right, here we go.
Because that is wrong. Matter of fact, it's so wrong that even it's taxonomically wrong. Meaning, if you were to tell your family...
Really? Because I feel like ape, as a category, is identical with the taxonomic superfamily of Hominoidea, of which Homininidae is a family, and within which you find the genus Homo, within which you also find the species Sapiens, H. sapiens, which is human. So taxonomically, I think all that's right. And then monkey is more or less identical with the, I believe it's the suborder Simioforms, which includes Cercopithidae, Hominoidea, as well as, what's the group name for the platyrians? I don't know, the South American monkeys.
Oh, okay.
So taxonomically, no, you are in fact both a monkey and an ape, Matt. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. They got rid of the family Pongo years ago.
Sorry for my lack of biology knowledge. So like it's all apes are monkeys, not all monkeys are apes?
Correct.
Check. Okay.
The two basic division of monkey is New World and Old World.
Okay.
Old World is themselves divided into apes and the other monkeys. And then
like orangutans?
So orangutans are in the monkey side, or sorry, the ape side. The other old world monkeys like macaques or baboons and things like that. Those are the other old world monkeys. Those are over in Cercopithecidae. Cercopithecidae? Okay. Yeah, that's it. I actually just looked that word up today to make sure I got it right in the script. And it's a really hard word for me to say. Cercopithecidae. I have to say it very slowly and deliberately.
Jeez.
Anyway.
I watch enough Gutsit Gibbon, I feel like I should know this, but...
Well, the thing is, like, look, a lot of her videos aren't about primatology.
That's true.
All right, here we go.
Or a scientist, look at that monkey, and it's an ape. They're going to correct you on that. They'll be like, no, that's an ape. That's not a monkey.
So actually, I made a video about this, and it was about the fact that the common words that people use do not always map onto scientific classifications in a very good way, right? So when we're talking about science and using terms, like technical terms like hominoidea and simiformes and hominidae and things like that, we can be very precise in ways that people, when they're just speaking to like friends and family or colleagues or whatever, aren't going to be. even when it comes to animals, right? That's why I am not going to go around correcting every person who says that, a peccary is a pig, even though it's not a pig. In fact, it's. And so,
Yeah.
or everyone who says that, like, a lemur is a monkey. Like, okay, no, it's not a monkey, but whatever, man. I don't have time to correct every slightly inaccurate or non-precise use of the English language referring to organisms.
Right. It only matters when you're like that stuff. Those categories matter when you're doing science,
Hmm.
because in science, precise language matters so that we all know exactly what we're talking about. But it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter nearly as much in like if you're just speaking colloquially. So, and honestly, people who try to like apply like are just like pedantic corrections. You they're annoying and don't get invited to parties. Um Eventually we stop inviting them, right?
Yeah. Oh, and Robert Madewell with no message has sent a milestone message. Well, thank you for being a member at the Tetrapod level for 15 months. I really appreciate it. Which again, guys, there's a link down in the description, or not in the description, right under the video if you want to join. It starts at $1.99. Go for it, or don't. So yeah, like I really agree with you. There's a reason to be very precise. So the thing is, what Matt's doing right now is one of those times when you need to be very precise,
Mm-hmm.
where the common usage of words isn't really what's important. What's important is the actual scientific classifications. So
Right.
maybe that's what Matt should focus on. Of course, then he wouldn't be able to make the point that it's not taxonomically valid.
That's true.
So, we'll just take a drink for Matt thinking that humans aren't taxonomically apes, even though they very much are. In fact, even his buddy Standing has said so. All right, here we go.
But yet, if you say to that human over there is an ape, they'll go, yeah. See the problem? They're swindling taxonomy onto you, swindling you into the ape family when you're not an ape. It's like saying a monkey's an ape. It's a lie. It's wrong.
Some monkeys are apes, Matt.
Some monkeys are apes. Yeah. We just talked about that.
Yep. In fact, this monkey-ape distinction in common language is actually pretty unique to English, and only fairly recently. Most languages use the same word to generally refer to monkeys and apes. Like in French, it's singe. They're just all singe. No one cares whether or not it has a tail or tricuspid molars. In fact, even in English, you can look at like old terms like the Barbary apes, which are a group of macaques on the Barbary Island. Yeah, those aren't apes. They're circopithecid monkeys. They're macaques. Macaques aren't apes. But at the time they were named, ape was just a general term for all monkeys, basically, in English. It actually started as just the general term for monkey in English, and then it slowly got narrowed down.
Dapper, are you saying that languages evolve and change over time? That can't possibly be true.
Also, I want to have everyone hit like. I'm seeing that about 20 people haven't hit like. For shame.
For shame.
All right, here we go.
So why do they do it with humans? Because they know that a kid won't understand, and pretty soon it just seeps into your brain until you believe it, and it becomes a truth. And then
okay, look, I'm.
Do you know who sets the textbook standards for the United States?
It's not primatologists, I can tell you that.
It's not primatologists. No, it's like the Texas School Board, because basically, the Texas School Board orders so many textbooks.
If Texas doesn't want your textbook, there's no point in making it.
Then no one's gonna get your textbook. Are you gonna tell me that like Texas is full of crazy liberals trying to indoctrinate your kids? Seriously?
Texas is pretty close to just saying slavery didn't happen ever in American history. I'm pretty sure they're not too worried about being taxonomically accurate with their paleoanthropology textbooks.
Right? They're certainly not like out here like menacingly petting all their cats, right? Like evil supervillains. Ah, yes. This is how we will trap the children into our atheistic ideology. Right? You want to tell me Texas is atheistic? Seriously?
No, I would never tell you that.
Seems to be what Ramat believes.
Yeah, but then again, this is again a man who took seriously the idea that maybe he just didn't need calories to keep surviving.
Maybe we don't need food.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, here we go.
All of a sudden you go, well, I'm a eukaryote. And then all of a sudden you're based down on this little minute scale.
Wait, is Matt saying he isn't a eukaryote? Because that's what it just
You
sounded like.
That sounded like that's what he said. You're a eukaryote, my guy. Like.
All right, we're gonna take a drink, then we have a couple messages to read.
Okay.
All right, Fade to Grave, who's been a member for 2 months at the tetrapod level, thank you very much, Fade to Grave, says Godzilla says cool kids hit like with a Godzilla emoji, so we'll take a drink for that too.
Aw. Cool kids do hit like.
It's true. Carrie Bronson for $5 says, if you took a drink for every time these folks started projecting, your livers would go on strike before the break. This is true.
That's true.
Yeah. Also, I gotta say, this is like the second stream I'm noticing it. YouTube has added like cool little stars and circles and whatnot to super chats. I like it. Good job, YouTube.
Good job, you two.
Yeah. Wait, did I mention Robert Carter at the beginning of this? Because if not, we're gonna have to mention him after the break.
No, we talked about Robert Carter.
But I didn't mention it to the chat. Okay, correct. Chat's gonna have to hear about Robert Carter after the break. All right, here we go, Matt. You got like 2.5 minutes to go, man.
And then everything that's a eukaryote is the same as you. So you're related.
No.
No.
My goodness. Okay, I'm gonna take a drink.
Goodness.
So Matt recognizes that humans are mammals. But Matt also recognizes that mammals are different from each other, right? In fact, one of his big points is that you can't connect humans to other mammals through common descent, which means, one, he knows that there's diversity within mammalia, and two, he finds it very easy to distinguish it between members of that group. The same is true for all groupings of taxonomy all the way down to subspecies, right? Anything above subspecies, the reason it exists in a taxon, but not the same taxonomy all the way down, is because it's distinguishable.
Yep.
If it weren't distinguishable, it would be in your species or subspecies if your species has those, which, by the way, humans don't.
Yeah.
So, like, oh my goodness. And the thing is, Kent Hovind does the same thing. It's like, if you can't tell the difference between a pine tree and a human or an elephant or whatever, because they're all eukaryotes, let me know, I can help you. And the thing is, that's never been anyone's argument.
It has not. It has never been a single person's argument.
And the thing is, it's even easy to see in your own personal life. Like, Maddie, do you have cousins?
I have cousins.
Are they all identical to you and indistinguishable from you?
Sure aren't.
Weird. It's almost like being related doesn't mean that you're identical.
Yeah, it's almost like you can tell us apart.
But wait.
And there's differences.
You are a direct clone of both your parents, though, right? You're indistinguishable from both of them. Somehow.
I couldn't keep a straight face with that one.
It's just like, it's like first level crap, man. Like first grade stuff. Like I could tell the difference between my cousins in first grade. Now, granted, I didn't know all their names. It's because there was like 80 something of them.
Yeah.
Because I had a very, very big family.
I got a lot of cousins. Not as many as you, it sounds like. But...
My grandmother, she stopped counting somewhere around 83. Her descendants.
Damn.
Yeah. She also did eventually have trouble with some of the names.
Fair. I am one of 10 grandchildren on my dad's side. But I'm one of the younger ones, so they're like older than me. Like almost everybody's married and almost everybody's got kids. So now we have a proper horde.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I remember when the first cousins once removed started to really multiply, and I was like, I can't keep track of this stuff. Sorry, guys. Not going to even try.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I don't know when everybody's birthday is. But I do.
I've never even attempted to try to keep track with my cousins of whose birthday is when.
I don't think I know all of, because there was some new babies, and I don't think I know their names.
And there's more new baby. There's another new baby.
There's another new baby. Yeah, she'll be here in like a month.
Nice. I'm assuming that you'll probably want to skip a Matt with Maddie on that occasion.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay, we won't do a postpartum Matt with Maddie.
Yeah, I'm gonna be otherwise occupied for probably September.
Understandable.
So,
Chris Reese for $2 says, first time catching a stream, love your content. Well, thank you very much, Chris Reese. I really appreciate it. We're going to hit play and see how this keeps going.
To grass, and you're related to a pine tree because you're a eukaryote.
Mm-hmm.
So your great grandpa was a pine tree.
No, you almost had it.
Oh, you were so close.
Okay, so if I say that, let's say that my cousin and I are related, that doesn't mean let's say it's a distant cousin, right? Like this is a fourth or fifth cousin, something like that, right? That doesn't mean my great-great-great-great-grandfather is my cousin. That isn't how it works. That's not how relationships work. Vandalia1998 for $5 says, is this the poll where if we are an ape/monkey, or if you, Dapper, the Diabs at Arkansas is one? No, this is if you personally could say that you are an ape and related to a monkey with a straight face. Then if you can, hit yes. If you can't, hit no. Right now with 43 votes, yes is winning 93%. No is far in the rear with 7%.
Oof.
Yeah, not a great showing for the no crowd. All right, here we go.
In some common ancestry form, get real. There's no.
Yeah, some common ancestry form that's nothing like a human or a pine tree, except that it is basically a eukaryote. Yeah,
right.
Exactly, Matt. We actually might get through this without Matt saying anything technically correct that we can drink for.
That would be impressive.
Facts. There's no observable science. It's not logical. It's not.
There's lots of observable science. We're just going to take a drink because it's just a blatant lie.
Yeah.
For one thing, when it comes to the eukaryotes, there's this big thing. It's called the nucleus of the cell, Matt. It's very observable, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, ask Benthoven next time he's on here if he can observe nuclei in cells, because he's trained to do that. He's seen a lot of nuclei.
Yeah.
Reasonable, and it's not science if it's not any of those things. So you're not related to an ape. You were created entirely different.
That's gonna have to be a citation needed
It's
for
gonna
me
be
on
a
that.
citation needed there, friends.
Yep.
They're very good boys.
Aw,
My
the
dogs
doggies.
they just got dinner. My husband just fed them, and so now Chester is like, his crate is right next to the bed next to me, and so he is like curled up in his crate and is kind of like full and happy and sleepy.
What a good boy.
He's so good.
All right, now we have to listen to this guy who's not such a good boy.
No.
Only proof for what I said, and it's testable and observable. You can go down to the maternity ward and watch children be born from.
No, actually,
Don't
you can't
do that. You can't. That's very illegal and weird.
That's not allowed. You have to actually be like someone
related.
The mother that's giving birth has to be like, I want this person in the room, and then you can come in. You can't just go watch people's births. That's not a thing you can just do. At least not in the United States.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
weird.
Yeah,
don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you really need to see humans being born and you don't currently know someone who's okay with you personally watching them give birth, there are human giving birth videos available on the internet, including, I believe, on YouTube. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to share it on screen because I don't think that YouTube will like it very much. But we're just going to go for human birth here on YouTube. And yeah, you can watch humans being born. You can watch C-section. Like, there's both real and fake. There's diagrams, cartoons. Like, don't stalk around a hospital spying on people giving birth. It's a really bad idea.
Use the available educational resources.
Right, they exist for a reason.
They do.
It's because, holy crap, does that person not want you in spying on them while they're giving birth? I promise. They don't want that.
No one wants that.
No.
Goodness gracious.
Humans. You won't ever watch them give birth to something else.
As predicted by evolution. So, we'll take a drink for Matt being right.
Technically correct.
as per the requirements of evolutionary biology, yes, you will never watch a member of one species give birth to a member of a completely other species, with the occasional exception of things like polyploidy. Alright, here we go.
So that proves that we reproduce after our kind, and no matter how many times that happens, a human will always be born. No matter how many minute, small changes happen, they will always be a human.
Thank you for explaining how evolution works, Matt. The problem is that that's how evolution is expected to proceed.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, once you're in a clade, like the human clade, the binomial nomenclature thing makes it a little bit complicated, but we're not going to get into that too much. But all of the descendants of humans, like Matt said, no matter how different they are, will all be humans.
All still humans.
So, I know it was a big thing on YouTube a few months ago. If you go look at, say, the All Tomorrows book by C.M. Kozman, and you look at all those weird monsters that he's got in there, like the asymmetric people, or the sacks of basically filter-feeding poop cleaners that are genetically engineered humans, that they're all humans. They remain human. It was a very weird book, by the way.
That sounds really weird. Sorry, I didn't actually know what you were talking about.
Also, I think you moved in relation to your microphone, because you're now peaking it a fair bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, a bit clipping.
Is that better?
It's a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you were just clipping a whole lot.
Gotcha. I will try to make that not happen again.
Okay.
But yet they believe that if you go backwards in time, that opposite thing happened.
Nope.
Nope, we sure don't.
So we'll take a drink for that being silly, and then we'll explain that whole thing. So like Matt himself said with the eukaryotes, right? So once the clade eukarya was established, all descendants of it have to stay within the clade of eukarya. Now, when one group becomes, say, plants, and another group becomes animals, and we're super simplifying, right? There's a whole bunch of splits before this and in between these. We're not worrying about it. Then, say, the animal group will then remain animals forever until until all animals go extinct, right? And then within that group, when we're going, again, simplified, when one little group splits off and becomes, say, sponges, and the other group goes off and becomes animals that can move around, the sponges are going to stay sponges, and the other group, called Eumetazoa, are going to stay Eumetazoans. And when Eumetazoa splits off into things like jellyfish and then other things that have bilateral symmetry, the jellyfish, or the cnidarians, and yeah, we're ignoring Ctenophoria for today. Sorry, guys. The cnidarians will stay cnidarians forever, no matter if they turn into box jellyfish or sea anemones or coral. And the bilaterians will stay bilaterians, even if they then later go on and decide to start doing weird 5-point radial symmetry like sea urchins or sea cucumbers. And even if they don't, like fruit flies and humans, they'll stay bilaterians. And it just keeps on going that way the whole way down. And new clades can form, but they have to form within old ones, and you don't get to get out of the old one. Space Dragon asks, do tunicates fall into the group that can move around? Yes. This is primarily because their larvae move around. So, all Eumetazoans have a motile stage of life, but not all of them are primarily motile, and there are a few parasites that are an exception to this, where they don't really have an ability to move around outside. Oh, hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Everything cut out there for a second, so I was just being quiet.
Well, yeah, it cut out for well more than a second. That was fun, guys. I don't know what to say. Except that I should still be live. Are you kidding me right now?
You're currently live on YouTube.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, there it is. That was always fun. Goodness. I'm sorry, guys. Let's just keep going.
And we mutated from frogs to fish to lizards to dinosaurs.
Nope. First fish is before frog on that. Second, humans aren't descended from frogs or dinosaurs, and dinosaurs aren't descended from frogs. So we're gonna take like What is that, 2 or 3 drinks? What do you think?
3. Just call it 3 for good measure.
There we go. It's easier for you to say. You're the one who's not drinking alcohol.
I know, I need to stay hydrated.
Yeah, Maddie's just like, oh, it's water. I'll just take 20 drinks, whatever, it's fine. And then there's me like, I think I might be dying. Space Dragon says, did you see the second tuna? Good question. I did not. Could you re-sign it, please? Carry Monster for $10, which might go towards yet another new internet setup, because I'm on like the 3rd one I've tried. Aliens would be outside the Terran tree of life. No? Yes. So assuming some kind of hybridization were possible, it almost certainly wouldn't be. Would the spawn be considered to have escaped its clitistics? No, actually, it would probably end up just being classified as a member of all of the previous clades on both sides. But again, the fact that there would be no genetic similarity likely is probably an indication that it's not really possible to create a hybrid of a Terran versus extraterrestrial life form, unless there was like a common ancestor of both, and even then, like most modern organisms can't hybridize. So you got to think about, like, you would be less similar to any alien life than you would be to like pond scum or like an actual amoeba. So
I just want to listen. You just tell that to B'Elanna Torres.
Okay, well, Star Trek has a weird explanation for this, where all of the humanoid life forms actually do have some kind of weird common ancestry from genetic engineering. But also,
okay.
I want to point out that the Doctor, or Schmallis as he's sometimes called,
yes,
had to do a fair bit of work to make sure that the interspecies pregnancy went well.
That's true.
So it was not an easy or automatic thing that she and Tom Paris would be able to have a baby at all. And that's with her already being half human.
Human, yeah.
The baby was 3/4 human.
True.
Anyway, here we go.
To birds, to my bacteria, and then boom, there you were at the beginning with.
Okay, so we're gonna take a couple more drinks and we're gonna go through this whole chain.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so Matt's idea of evolution is that we went from frogs to fish to dinosaurs to birds to bacteria
to humans.
At no point did you ever actually get any of that right, Matt. It's frankly amazing. You could not have gotten that more wrong if you had tried to. Every step of the way was completely wrong. Vandali 1998 for $5 says, "What, you don't want to drink alcohol when pregnant? Since when was this a thing, Godzilla?"
True.
So
I bet Godzilla could drink while pregnant.
Oh, probably.
Probably.
So the thing is, like, look, there's a safe amount of alcohol to drink when you're pregnant. It's just very low. So,
and we don't actually know what it is.
Yeah, but there's the other thing, right? Like, if during the 9 months or so of your pregnancy you drink a beer, yeah, probably nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But why do you bother risking it? Just don't drink the beer.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean...
listen, I'm going to complain about it a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
But...
yeah, but look,
anyway.
Here's the thing, right? For all of history, people have had occasional drinks while they were pregnant, right?
Yeah, even like currently in many cultures, it's very normal.
Yeah, but here's the thing. There's no known safe amount, so why bother risking it?
Exactly.
Now, and the thing is, this is also not like, 12th century Europe where the well might be contaminated, so if you don't drink the beer, you might just die. And
right.
You know what's worse for your baby than having a beer? You dying of dehydration or dysentery.
Exactly.
So, there are always circumstances, and you can say, oh, historically people used to do this and that. It's like, yeah, well, we're not in those times for good reason, and we aren't in those same circumstances. So we don't have to take the same risks.
Listen, everything in life is a cost-benefit analysis,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I have made the cost-benefit analysis and decided to not.
That is the recommendation I would give to pregnant people generally.
Yeah.
If you don't need to drink that alcohol to survive physically, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
Here we go.
I'm assuming that was sarcasm in that comment, but
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure Vandalia 1998 is not pro pregnant people getting drunk. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Just left-handed amino acids floating around in an ocean somewhere. Totally illogical.
No one has ever proposed this. All right. So, you know what? It's hot and I'm thirsty. I'm taking a drink because it's also stupid.
Yeah.
So here's the
Do
thing
it.
with the isomers, which is the left or right-handed amino acids. So, first of all, we'll explain what isomers basically are. So amino acids are complex and not really symmetrical molecules. And so they're kind of like your hands, right? So your hands are mirror images of each other. But you can't overlay one on top of the other without there being a mismatch, right? You always have like, your pinky's on your first finger, and then the other first finger, and like your thumbs are sticking up to the side. If you put them, bottom on top, and if you put them face to face or back to back, then all the fingers line up, but they're facing opposite directions, right? Your hands are isomers of each other. They mirror each other, but they're not actually the same shape, right? Amino acids are like this too. And Earth life uses exclusively left-handed amino acids, with, I think there was like some indication that's still contentious that there might have been some like bacterium that used a right-handed amino acid in a few cases. I'm not sure if that's even still considered a valid result, or if it was overturned, or even if I'm remembering a real result. But so the question then becomes, okay, so in abiogenesis scenarios, how do we get collections of monoisomers? And the thing is that there are in fact natural processes that do selectively encourage the propagation of single isomeric concentrations of amino acids. Now, I don't know all of them because I'm not a biochemist or any kind of chemist, but the thing is, like, this is research that's been done, and we know of things like various evaporative cycles where you have a slight preponderance of one isomer over another, and that becomes amplified as this pool containing the chemicals to make amino acids as well as containing amino acids goes through repeated inundations followed by evaporations. So, like, it's a thing that can happen. You don't need there to be just a magical ocean that poofs into existence with a bunch of left-handed amino acids. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and Atangelo just says that there just aren't those papers. So, you know what? We'll put you in some timeout, Atangelo. Come back when you can stop just blatantly lying in chat. Which hopefully will be in
come
like 4
back when
minutes.
you have, come back when you have an argument other than nuh-uh.
Right? Now, you can take issue with those papers and say, I think they're unrealistic for reasons X, Y, and Z, but you can't just say that they don't exist.
Yeah.
No. These are papers that I know you are aware of, because I know you've watched people talk about them.
Totally non-scientific. They can't even get it to happen in a laboratory. So why did it happen in the long time ago past?
Actually, experiments in the production of collections of monoisomers, or not monoisomer, but like single-handedness collections. There's a technical term that I can't remember off the top of my head, because again, I'm not a great chemistry guy. But yeah, like there are laboratory experiments that do in fact result in prebiotically feasible chemical reactions that result in monoisomeric collections of amino acids. It's just a thing that happens. You can argue about its applicability to prebiotic conditions. You can argue about the likelihood of this being feasible as like in terms of like time frame or efficiency or whatever. You just can't say that there's no such thing. Oh, Atangelo will be back. I mean, he's only timed out. I haven't blocked him or anything. Because the thing is, he's usually not rude enough for me to want to block him. Yeah. At least not permanently. Although I do note that a few of his channels actually are blocked, because Otangelo is a guy who likes to have, like, a million different alts. Now, that's hyperbole, but, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Not science, guys.
Well said, well said. And I guess for my final thought, it'd be, for the atheists watching, you could try to, I know you can't just flip.
I say it every time. It's a pet peeve of mine. It's not atheists versus Christians, guys.
It's not.
There are Christians on both sides of this argument, and there are anti-evolution atheists Fred Hoyle comes to mind.
The switch and believe, right? You can't believe in God like that. But, you should try to do what I did, where it's like, I wanted to believe. And so I went through the motions.
No, don't believe things because you want to. Believe things because you feel like you have good reasons to.
Yeah.
If I believed the things I wanted to believe, I would believe all sorts of crazy things, because a lot of things that aren't true would be more fun if they were true.
Yes, absolutely. I would love Bigfoot to be real.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be so cool. There's just no evidence for it.
In fact, there's evidence against it at this point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
believe things because you find that you have good reasons for them.
Yes.
Yeah, Space Dragon says dragons. Yes, that would also be really cool.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to fight a dragon? That'd be so fun.
Oh, can I ride one? That seems more fun, actually.
Yeah, fair.
And I started reading the Bible more and just even praying to a God. You could pray to God even if you don't believe in God. You could just ask God, "Hey, God, are you real?" The point is to be God-fearing.
Yeah, no. So anyway, that's the rest of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on a quick break. I'm going to refresh my drink. I'm sure Maddie has to do some kind of bio stuff because, she's pregnant. We've been here for an hour and she's been drinking water. Well, I know how it goes.
Yes, I have to pee. That is true.
I know how it goes. You've got a whole human pressing on your bladder.
I do.
So we'll be back in a bit. Then we'll talk briefly about Rob Carter. I'll give my quick commercial, and then we will continue on with a different video.
Yay!
All right, guys. So I will catch you guys on the other side of the break. All right. Hey, everybody. We are back. This time we've got some Matt Powell coming at you because I don't want to finish that guy telling us to just believe what we think would be the most fun to believe. Because that's a terrible way to go through life. That is a way to get yourself seriously injured and seriously disappointed. But, so some of you guys might remember that I, along with Dr. Dan Certain Cardinal and Gutsa Gibbon, or Erica, did a 6-part series about a scene from the larger creationist film project Dismantled. And that a man named Dr. Robert Carter got very, very, very angry with us naughty anti-creationist types for our vitriolic rants. And he wrote a whole long CMI article on creation.com in which he attempted to dox me, but ended up actually giving the personal information for a different guy who also goes by Dapper Dino. So that was fun. Actually, shout out to Jonathan Sarfati for correcting that. So, Mr. Sarfati, if you watch that, I disagree with a lot of things you say, and I don't always think you're arguing in good faith, but I do appreciate that correction. Because that guy did not deserve to get dragged into this, because he has nothing to do with any of this. But, interestingly enough, just today, as far as I know, Robert Carter dropped a little video on his personal channel that very few people watch, pointing out that, in fact, I was right in my criticism of his comparison of the cheetah census population to the human out of Africa bottleneck effective population size. Now, of course, he did this without mentioning that I'm the one who called him out on that. Because why would he mention me in his correction after attempting to dox me in his attack piece? Like, why even bother? But I want to say...
Yeah, why? That doesn't make any sense, Dapper.
Yeah,
like,
that's...
Come on.
You never give credits to your critics unless you think you're right and they're wrong.
Right.
So it was just a fun thing to watch after I got very, very cross with him about that mix-up. I was not okay with it. It still bugs me, actually. Actually, I still have trouble looking at cheetahs to this day. Yeah, he basically ruined...
That's a shame, because they're majestic.
I know, and he kind of ruined cheetahs for me. I'm starting to get over it, but it's still... he basically ruined cheetahs for me for at least months.
Jerk.
But yeah, so it was nice to get that little retraction there in a place where almost no one will see it. But hey, you know what? I have it linked in a community tab post. So go over to my channel, check out the video, and, feel free to thank politely, and I mean it, don't harass anyone, but feel free to politely thank Rob Carter for agreeing with Dapper Dinosaur's criticism while also not bothering to name him. So, although I will say, Dr. Dancer and Cardinal, being a geneticist, also noticed the problem, but he graciously waited until someone else had noticed it before bothering to comment. So I appreciate that from Dan.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like, and I'm not even, like, I've taken no actual genetics courses, and it was blatantly obvious to me right away, which I just feel like he's all in the video like, oh, I knew that there was a problem here, and I'm like, no, you didn't know. You just, either you didn't know what you were talking about, which is the more likely one in this case, I think, or you were just lying. Because Rob Carter, despite his protestations otherwise, isn't really a geneticist either.
Yeah, and I don't like to assume people are lying, right? I like to assume they're misinformed or don't understand something.
Yeah.
And so, now there's sometimes with younger creationists that you can't, like, you're like, the only logical conclusion here is that you are blatantly lying, and that makes me uncomfortable. But, like...
Oh, I got over that discomfort.
Yeah.
I got over that discomfort, like, years ago. I'm like, nope, it's very obvious you're lying here, and I don't mind saying it. Vandali1998 for $5 says, I accidentally subbed to the wrong Dapper that was doxed years ago for 3 seconds when I first met you, so easy mistake. Yeah. So basically, after I made this channel, I found out there was another guy named Dapper Dino, which is why I changed the name of the channel to Dapper Dinosaur. So now I tell people specifically, Dapper Dinosaur, don't look for Dapper Dino. You can call me that, but don't look for that channel name. Also, I think, Maddie, you might need to move the microphone away from your breath.
From my face again?
Yeah.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
So the quick commercial, guys, is... there is a Patreon and a channel membership. It really helps out the channel a lot because YouTube is very, very, very fickle. And I can go from, having a great month in terms of the YouTube ad stuff to essentially nothing, with Patreon is pretty reliable. If I look at how much is on there, that's about how much I'm likely to get, because a very small percentage of people ever have their cards declined, and usually even most of them end up fixing that problem by the end of it. Also, similarly, the channel membership program, very reliable. There's a whole bunch of benefits. The Patreon starts at just $1 a month. Channel membership starts at $1.99. You can pay basically anything from that all the way up to $100 if you want to. And also, if you go annual on Patreon, there is a discount. I think it's 12% if you go annual instead of month to month. And also, you get access to the Discord server where I spend most of my time on Discord in there. We do watch parties. Sometimes we'll play games. We'll discuss videos. There's early access to, I think, like 11 or 12 new videos that you guys haven't seen if you're not a member or patron. So, like, you could join right now and then spend, I think, like, the next 7 or 8 straight hours watching new Dapper Dino content.
And be able to brag to all your friends that you got to see that before them.
Exactly. And also, quite frankly, it helps monetarily. Like, it's a tough time out there. And I get that's why many of you may not be able to afford it, and if you can't afford it, I don't want it. But it's also why I really would appreciate it if you would. So, with that, Maddie, unless you have anything real quick, we're going to hit play on this Matt Powell video.
Let's hit play. Is this one of the ones where he's going to hold a chicken?
I hope so.
Okay.
I haven't seen this. It's called Best Arguments for Creation Science, #Natural Selection. Lethal Evidence Against Darwinism. All of that is all the title.
That's the whole title. That's a lot.
It is a lot
to put in the title.
Erechamian sends a $20 super sticker that says, "Thanks for being you." Thank you very much, Erechamian. Which every time I say that, I feel like I'm like over-pronouncing it, but that's explicitly how you told me to pronounce it. So that's why I do it. All right, here we go.
Natural selection itself cannot preserve a population.
I mean, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it can. Like, if they're able to adapt to changing environments fast enough, then they can, in fact, be preserved by natural selection. So I'll just take a drink. I'm thirsty. It's hot. Whatever.
Yeah.
Natural selection is something that is required in order to drive evolution. Natural selection is something that is required, according to an evolutionist, to keep us alive.
Okay, to keep your species from going extinct, not to keep you personally alive.
Yeah.
So
and that's a common mistake. Mm-hmm. Like, and this isn't just with young Earth creationists, because I see this with like climate stuff too. Understanding, like, talking about populations versus individuals.
Yeah.
When we're you can't apply. We talk about populations in a very different way than we talk about individuals, and that's
right.
That's difficult for people who are like not in science,
right,
to wrap their heads around.
It's kind of like the weather versus climate distinction. A climate model is useless for telling you when it's going to rain this week. It cannot tell you those things. However, it could tell you what your average annual rainfall is going to be 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Whereas the things that we do to model, is it going to rain this week, how much and where, have no realistic chance of telling you what your average rainfall is going to be for a year 50 years from now.
Exactly.
Similarly, there are parts of biology that can tell us what's going on in a particular organism, right? Things like its specific physiology and anatomy and its current environment and its biochemistry, all these things, right? Mm-hmm. But on its own, that's not going to tell us what the history of the species is likely to be in the future or what it was in the past. Contrarily, knowing the various forces of natural selection and the evolutionary history of a current lineage is not going to tell you a whole lot about how some particular individual organism is going to do today.
Right.
So, all right, here we go. We'll get a little bit more of Matt Powell. I was about to call him Raw Matt, but we've switched. We've made the switch. This is a different Matt.
This is a different Matt.
They're well, we said before we actually started that they're both somehow worse than the other. It's always, we're always like, oh, we're gonna finish with this mat, and it's like, yeah, but we're gonna go on to the next one, and it's always like, oh, that's somehow worse.
Oh, that's somehow worse.
It's amazing.
As a population.
Oh, okay. You know what? You said as a population, so you got that right. I'll retract the previous drink. I'll add another one. So, you know.
There you go for a technically correct.
Yeah, sorry about that, Matt. I cut you off.
The problem is that natural selection itself cannot stop mutations from getting added to populations over generations.
Well, okay. It can't stop them from being added, but it can stop them from persisting, which is the important part. So I'm going to see where he goes from here, because, like, technically that's true.
Yeah.
I'll take a drink.
Can I summarize what I think he just said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I think he just said is natural selection can't stop any random mutation from appearing in a population, which to me is true.
It is very true.
Like, that's a true statement. What natural selection can do would be, so like, let's say I have a weird rare mutation where I am, I don't know, super susceptible to the flu, right? If and when I get the flu, it's just going to be real bad for me. And I was like born with this mutation, you know? Well, then I'm like, if it's a bad enough mutation, I would likely die young, right? If I'm in an environment with the flu, which would not.
Those are.
Yeah, which would be natural selection preventing that mutation from persisting in the population,
right?
Because it would prevent me from passing it to my offspring,
right? What natural selection can prevent is deleterious mutations building up in a population over time. It cannot stop them from being added to a population. Because, like, anytime there's a conception, a new member of the species now exists, and it's going to have mutations. And some of them might be so fatal that it doesn't make it past the embryonic stage, right? But for a time, those mutations were in the population.
Right.
So, like, I don't know what to tell you. So...
yeah. So I guess I'm not sure what his point is yet.
Oh, Dr. Dan, who's in the chat, is right. He's going to do genetic entropy. That's where this is going to go. I'm pretty sure.
What this means is that each generation, we actually have 100 to 200 more mutations than our parents had.
Kind of. So.
Kind of? Yeah.
Here's how that actually ends up working. If you compare a somatic cell in the body of a parent, or both parents, say, to a somatic cell in the body of one of their offspring, you'll get about that many mutations. However, some of those mutations won't be in the germ line of that child, which means they can't pass them on. So that's going to get rid of some of those mutations. Further, some of those mutations that are in the germ line have a chance of just not being passed on anyway. Because chances are that when you reproduce, unless you reproduce a whole lot more than most humans do, not all of your genes that are in your germline cells are going to be passed down. And by genes, I guess I mean not all of your alleles. I'm sorry about that. So that's going to further cut down on that. Next, selection is going to prevent some of those from then persisting in future generations, even if you do manage to reproduce. So as time goes, the number of mutations that you could see from one generation to the next, which is how you measure these mutations, right? Like, no one's going in and harvesting your parents' gametes and then checking your gametes specifically to get these mutation rates. For one thing, that would be horribly invasive.
Yeah.
So, like, no one's doing it. However, that's why you do things like you do intergenerational studies, where you don't study just parents and children. You study grandchildren, great-grandchildren. If you can, you keep going. And what you find is that the number of mutations that have accumulated per generation starts to go down over a longer period of time. So you're approaching going from what's called the mutation rate, which is how often mutations occur per cell division, to the phylogenetic replacement rate, which is how many mutations fix in a population per year. And so if you want to look at the accumulation of mutations in a population, you need to look at the phylogenetic replacement rate. So you can't just do the naive pedigree where you take some somatic cell from mom, some somatic cell from son or daughter, and then see what the mutations are. That's not going to cut it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we often do this with mitochondria or Y chromosome because they don't cross over, so that makes it easier, but it's the same principle.
Yeah. So, okay. Also, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I'm going to play the role of not a biologist here. So, is it true to say that there's like, I mean, I think obviously this is true, but there are a finite number, granted it's a large number, but there is a finite number of mutations that can happen.
At least for point mutations, that's correct.
Okay, at least for point mutations. Okay.
So basically, for point mutations, a point mutation is just one base pair gets switched out for a different one. So the human genome is, if I remember correctly, about 3 billion base pairs long. So there's that basically times 4 possible point mutations. So basically, there are 12 billion possible point mutations that could occur. But here's a fun fact. If you then take that and you say divide that by the 100 or so that Matt's talking about, we get 1.2 billion. But
which is less than the population.
Way less, which means humans are what's called mutation saturated. Every single possible point mutation has occurred.
Okay, yeah, that's actually what I was getting at. And so, like, just because I have a different mutations from my parents doesn't mean I have novel mutations in the population. So, like, yeah, so if it's saturated, then any point mutation that can happen has happened. And then it's just a matter of which of those are going to like persist through the population over time. So
you know what, I did get the math wrong. It's 9 billion, not 12 billion, because I forgot that you can't change it back to your own base pair. That's called an auto-mutation.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. But so so even more so.
Sorry guys, I can't do drunk math very well. It's my ability to do math just goes down precipitously with alcohol.
Yeah. So Matt's idea here that we're going to continue to accumulate more and more and more, I think in his mind, deleterious mutations.
Yeah.
Right. Is just silly.
Yeah, it's not true.
Right, it's not true. And it's also like there's a finite number of these that can occur. Because now that number might be really big, but it is finite.
Yeah, it's about 9 billion.
So okay, yeah. Anyway, that's I hope I made a point there.
You did. Also, Goop23 says I can't do sober math very well. So here's a weird thing about my math ability. Like, basic arithmetic, I'm actually pretty good at, but I'm not amazing at. But then I get into Blender, and I'm like just doing like rough estimates of like 4D vector sums in my head to predict what I think the outcome is going to be if I put a whole bunch of stuff together, and then it works. And I'm like, oh hey, I guess I was right about my 4D vector math. Gamey. So like I have like this weirdly specific ability to do like absurdly complicated math thing just kind of intuitively, and then it comes to like, okay, but what if I multiply these 3 numbers together? I'm like, I don't know, let me get my calculator. So yeah, it's a weird thing. I have a very unusual relationship with math. All right, here we go.
Now these mutations are defined as neutral. However,
it's not that they're defined as neutral, it's that most of them are observably neutral. So here's what a neutral mutation means. It means there's no measurable effect on your fitness. What does your fitness mean? Well, ultimately, it's your reproductive success. It's usually defined with great-grandchildren who, who reproduce, right? So if you have four grandchildren who reproduce, then your fitness is 4. If you have 12, it's 12. Now, if we can't measure an effect of a mutation on that fitness, then it is, in fact, neutral. That's what that means. Now, is it easy to figure out exactly whether or not a particular mutation is beneficial or neutral or deleterious? In many cases, it's not easy, right? Because, you know, life is complicated. Maybe you have one deleterious mutation, but you have a compensatory beneficial mutation. Or maybe it's detrimental, but, you know, happenstance happened to mean that you ended up doing pretty well in reproduction anyway, because you got lucky, because that can happen too, right? So it's not easy to measure on a mutation by mutation basis. But it's not that they're just defined into being neutral. We have a definition for fitness, and from that flows what counts as beneficial, neutral, or deleterious. You get that causality wrong there, Matt.
Yeah.
It still is an alteration of existing information that is functional information.
No, that is not always true. So we're going to take a drink. Okay, so there are two basic parts of the genome that you can think of in terms of mutations and how they're important. One part of the genome, and this isn't like a physical section of it, right? This is all interspersed throughout the whole thing. All your chromosomes have chunks of both kinds of genetic material. One is sequence constrained. Sequence constrained means what's actually important for your functioning is that the sequence be what it is, or a subset of other options that all are functionally the same, right? Some mutations in this area will be detrimental because some of those areas, the sequence is important. Other parts of your genome are not sequence constrained. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't do anything. Some of them do. In fact, sometimes it's just a spacer between sequence constrained regions to prevent spurious transcription when it's not needed. So you'll have, a few little genes here, then a spacer region that's not going to be read by anybody, not transcribed, and then another section is going to be transcribed. And the stuff in the middle, it's just there as a spacer. It doesn't matter what it is, it just matters that it exists. So a point mutation there cannot have an effect. In fact, even certain amounts of like insertions or deletions in that area may not have an effect because it's not sequence constrained. It just needs to be present. So if a mutation happens there, there's definitely no difference. Now, there's another thing that can happen, which is called a synonymous mutation. So Maddie, stop me if you're confused by this as I try to explain it, because I don't know like the levels for biology, non-biology type things. So
I gotcha. I'm following for right now, but I'm listening.
Okay. So the basic way the transcription works, right, is you have base pairs arranged into sets of 3. They're little triplets, right? And one side of the DNA is going to be the important part. So you're just looking at the A, C's, G's, and T's on one side. And each 3 is what's called a codon. Every codon is assigned either a stop function, a start function, or one of the amino acids that life uses. So like tryptophan or, cytosine or leucine or something, right? But with a few exceptions, every codon has more than one option for that thing that it codes for. Right? So there's more than one leucine codon. So if you mutate from one codon that's leucine to another one that's leucine in a gene, the protein won't change at all. It'll be chemically identical. Now, there has been a recent paper that's been somewhat controversial claiming that there are some small fitness costs associated with these synonymous mutations. But right now, the field is very skeptical of that claim. It has not become the consensus. The consensus right now is still that these mutations are essentially completely neutral. Now, even if it isn't a mutation between synonymous codons, you can actually still change the amino acid, and in some cases, it still won't matter. So, for instance, I looked this up recently. There are over 1,000 variants on the human hemoglobin protein. So there are 1,000 ways in which just humans chemically have different hemoglobin to each other. But the vast majority of those are essentially functionally identical. They're just as good, despite having a different amino acid sequence. So we know that even if you change the amino acid sequence, it doesn't necessarily have to have a negative or positive effect. So all over the place, we see all these ways in which you can have mutations that don't actually have any harmful effect. In fact, the broad consensus is that virtually all mutations are neutral.
Okay.
So...
And couldn't you make an argument that, like, sorry, I did follow that, so I'm very proud of myself.
Yay!
So, so the main thing here is that most mutations are observed to be neutral, as opposed to what Matt just said, which is defined to be neutral.
Right.
But I was thinking about that hemoglobin, and wouldn't that be actually like a thing that helps with fitness if I can have a lot of mutations but still make hemoglobin?
Yeah, actually, so one of the things about that has been a fairly recent addition to evolutionary theory is ideas about um, having a genome that's robust to mutations and also evolvability, right? So the ability to evolve is something that itself can evolve, and your ability to mutate is also something that can evolve, and also having relatively robust to changes proteins that can afford to mutate here and there is also something that could evolve, right? You don't have to use the minimal amount of amino acids to get a job done. If having a larger one, maybe there's a metabolic cost, right? It costs more to make bigger proteins, but it might be offset in the long run by increased robustness to mutation. Because remember, you also have to worry about mutations in your somatic cells, right? So if the cells that end up dividing into you from a zygote, if the ones that end up making your bone marrow get a mutation, you're going to make mutant hemoglobin, possibly, even if your kids don't, because it might not have entered the germline.
Right.
So, and Creation Myths, Dr. Dan points out that, yes, Maddie, that's called mutational robustness. That is definitely a thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm learning things tonight, team.
Yay.
Okay.
And I'm also not embarrassing myself about genetics, which is always fun.
Yeah. Thinking about that seems way more fun than watching Matt stand in his forest. I know he and his wife raise chickens, and I really want him to bring the chickens in.
Honestly,
he sometimes does.
I gotta say, I think the backgrounds are my favorite part of Matt Powell videos, because that's a nice background. Come on, that's pretty.
Yeah. Like, he does a good job at producing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this looks gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's well lit. He's in focus. The background has there's a nice deep depth of field effect going. It's a nice time of day to be filming. Yeah. Matt should be making movies and not this crap.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we go.
You have to ask the question, what will happen if we continue having mutations that mix up and scramble information over these generations?
Tell me
All
that.
mutations must have some effect.
Why?
Very wrong. We just spent a whole bunch of time going over how that's not true.
Yeah. We'll just, see previous conversation.
Right. All right, here we go.
Even if that effect is vanishingly small.
Still no.
If you start randomly changing DNA sequences and randomly changing functional information.
What is functional information, Matt? I would love for you to tell me. Because creationists love to go on about information and functional information and specified information without ever giving a clear definition for any of it, such that we could measure it and see whether it went up or down. And I'll tell you why. It's because any definition that you give that is actually measurable results in observed instances of increase in this information via mutation. That's the reason.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say, it does seem to be a favorite tactic of younger creationists and pseudoscience in general, to say scientific sounding terms without defining them.
Right.
Right. Without giving a specific scientific definition. And I think we talked, I think this was on air an hour and a half ago, that in science, being precise with your language matters a whole lot, even if it doesn't so much in English, in regular spoken language.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that, and it's very true. Yeah. All right, here we go.
All right.
It is going to, by definition, cause it to be dysfunctional.
No.
This is why evolution is false, and this is why creation science is true.
Yeah.
Because of the fundamental of science, because of the fundamental of what a mutation even is. Mutations.
First of all, grammatically, buddy, that would be fundamentals.
Yeah.
But but also no, and a great way to dispute what he's saying would be knock out experiments in mice, right? Where they just use CRISPR and go in and let's just see what happens if this part of the genome doesn't exist. And then a lot of times the mice are fine.
Right. Actually, there have been huge knockout studies. There have been mice that have had huge portions of their genome just completely deleted. Literally deleted. And they're just perfectly functional mice.
Right. So the assumption, I think, that is going into what Matt is saying is that every single piece of DNA, as it specifically is, is I think it requires every single bit of your genome to be functional. I think that's a built-in assumption to what he's saying.
So it's usually the assumption that creationists go with, and it's the one that fits the best. Although I could imagine some who would say otherwise, who would say like, "Oh no, there's buffer built in for mutations because God blessed us with that after the fall or something." But it's not the typical tack that they use.
Yeah. So let me ease off. So I think at least what Matt is implying is that most of the genome needs to be functional.
At the very least, yeah, he would expect that. Yeah, I would
expect.
Right.
Yeah. So I think he would be. I would like to know what his thoughts on knockout experiments in mice are.
That would be very fascinating.
Yeah, I would really like to know what he thinks about that.
Yeah. Also, I ended the poll. Can you say, quote, "I'm an ape and I'm related to monkeys"? Yes said 92% of the 80 votes. No said 7% of the 80 votes. It's interesting when I get more votes than people watching. Thanks, guys. All right, here you go.
Building up in populations over generations will cause the extinction of all populations over time.
No, it won't.
Citation needed.
Oh, yeah, we'll put in a citation needed for that. So here's the thing, right? We know of populations with smaller genomes and vastly higher reproductive rates than humans. And I mean, when I say vastly, I mean orders of magnitude higher, many orders of magnitude higher. If there were any truth to genetic entropy, these populations would be gone. In fact, many of these populations have only limited ability to do things like exchange genetic information, which helps mitigate the problem that Matt Powell was talking about. Because the thing is, genetic entropy is basically just a redressing of Muller's ratchet. So Muller's ratchet was sort of like a thought experiment, like problem for asexual life that was basically figured out in the 50s. Like, this has been wrong for like 70 years, even for multicellular asexual life, right? So the idea is, okay, so you have an asexual population with no interchange of genetic material. So mutations happen. Now, most of them are going to be, neutral, which, whatever, we can just kind of discount those. But it is the case that a higher portion of them are going to be deleterious than are going to be positive, right? Beneficial. So then the thought experiment says, okay, so if that happens, then you end up getting, without any real ability to purge these deleterious mutations, you get a buildup of these deleterious mutations compared to positive, which should drive the fitness down. Well, it turns out that, in fact, asexual organisms have ways to deal with this, one of which is just that a lot of the organisms that you think of as asexual aren't entirely asexual. A lot of them do, in fact, exchange genetics with closely related organisms, or even in some cases with distantly related organisms. Another one is that organisms that are asexual will often cause genetic recombination within their own genomes when reproducing. So they'll do crossover events with their genetic material to shuffle up how each allele is sort of, arranged in their genetic material. And then when they reproduce, their offspring, while they only have one parent, aren't actually clones. They actually have different genetics.
Well, that's cool.
Yep. So there are solutions to Muller's ratchet, but it was never even supposed to apply to sexually reproducing organisms because they exchange genetic material with each other and they have crossover events on their chromosomes that can, even within the chromosome, can swap which mutations are associated with other ones. So this has just not ever been a thing that was seriously taken as a problem in genetics, and we've known that that's not a problem in genetics for, like I said, about 70 years.
I also want to point out that, the terminology here, which is specifically young Earth creationist terminology of genetic entropy, bothers me because that shows a distinct misunderstanding of what entropy is.
Yes, that is true.
Right.
My goodness.
Entropy is just it's like thermal energy that's not available to do work. And that's it.
Yep.
That's all it is.
It's a very important thing. But
it's real important to understand, but it's not
apply to this.
It's not more complicated, right? So
well, if you want to dive into quantum microstates, it is more complicated.
Well, okay, it is more complicated, but I mean the hot philosophical take that entropy is this descent of the universe into chaos is complete made up BS.
Yeah.
It's just specifically heat energy in a system unavailable to do work.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yay.
Yay. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Anyway.
That accrue those mutations. This is why creation is true. It shows us that if we go back far enough in time, you would trace back to a single couple with the least.
It doesn't actually show that. I mean, it could, but creation science, using science loosely, posits this. It doesn't show it. It posits. And those are different words for a very good reason.
Yeah.
Least amount of mutations, maybe even a perfect genetic code.
I'm going to drink for perfect genetic code, because if anything ever sounded like eugenics, it's that phrase.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, team, we're against eugenics here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or I'll do a little bit of nuance and say I'm against forcing people to reproduce to meet your breeding standards for the human race. I do think that if someone decides that because they have some genetic disorder they don't want to reproduce, that's perfectly acceptable.
That's totally fair. That's like if you and your partner know you both carry the recessive gene for, say, cystic fibrosis, right? And you're like, you know what? I don't want to roll those dice. I don't want to put a kid through that.
Right.
Like, let's not have kids or let's adopt instead. Yep. Great. Yeah, that. Anyway.
Yeah, because those are like thematically related, but there's a big difference. One which comes down to this thing called consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the important part of eugenics. That it was why it was a problem. Was there was a distinct lack of consent in the forced sterilizations that was going on. And by the way,
you know what I'm super pro? Consent. Informed consent.
Yeah, those are very important words. Informed consent. Because the genetics or the eugenics movement, I should say, it sterilized a whole lot of people forcibly in the United States and in Europe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not okay.
That's not okay. That's not informed consent at all.
Mm-mm. All right, here we go.
And that it became imperfect when sin entered in, and mutations have accrued since.
That's theology, not science.
Yep. Here's what I want to know. I want a test that shows how many mutations you have per sin. Right?
Ooh.
I want you to get the biggest sinners and see if they have more mutations in their offspring than, like, the most saintly of people. And I want to see, like, do different religions have different rates of mutation? Because then the religion with the lowest mutation rate is probably the least sinful, and maybe that's the right one.
Ooh.
So if sin causes mutation, I want to see the study.
Side note, now all I can think of is that South Park episode where the world ends. And turns out Mormonism was the correct choice.
Well, hey, if Mormons turn out to have the lowest mutation rate, maybe that's evidence for it. Oh, goodness. All right. We should move on, because if not, I'll start talking about takes on human genetics from Mormonism, because historically there's been some pretty bad hot takes from Mormons on genetics.
Pretty bad Mormon hot takes, yeah.
Yeah. Oof.
Remember, we die from mutations.
Do we?
Some people do. Most people don't.
Yeah. Most people, like, if you get hit by a truck, I don't think that was caused by a mutation.
Probably not, no.
I guess you could argue if you die from cancer, you die from mutations.
Yeah, you dead. Or, you might have a genetic disorder that causes you to have an early death or something like that, right? So it is not false to say that people do die from mutations, but it is false to say that that's the reason everyone dies.
Agreed.
Yet mutations are supposedly the thing that drives a fish to a fisherman.
Yeah, because you skipped over an important class of mutations, Matt.
Yep.
The beneficial ones. So we're just going to take a drink for Matt being like, well, this doesn't make any sense, despite intentionally himself skipping over an important group of mutations while lying about most of the other ones.
Yeah.
over millions of years, or even a frog to a prince. I'm going to reiterate, frogs are nowhere on the ancestry of humans. Frogs are a lissamphibian group that diverged in the Mesozoic after amniotes had already evolved and split into mammaliformes and other non-mammaliform amniotes like diapsids and whatnot. So no, there are no frogs in the human ancestry. There's not even anything that would look very much like a frog.
That would be like there's no amphibians?
So there were things that you would be very similar to modern amphibians in that they're tetrapods that laid eggs in water, and they had a development as larvae, much like fish do. Like they're when they hatch, they would look very much like fish fry, and they would have an aquatic juvenile stage, and then eventually they would come on land as adults, or would be semi-aquatic.
Okay.
But they weren't. They would have looked to you more like lizards or crocodiles, but without scales. They would not have looked very much like frogs.
Frogs. Okay.
Yeah, and they would have had claws and teeth like a reptile.
Ooh.
Unlike most modern amphibians that have reduced dentition at best and usually don't have claws. So frogs do have reduced dentition. Salamanders, I believe, generally don't. Caecilians, which are weird worm-like amphibians, have horrifying monster jaws, but they're tiny, and you almost never see it. But if you ever look at like a blown-up photograph of one of their skulls, it's like a horror movie.
It's like all jaw.
Yeah, there's a bunch of jaw and these gigantic, for like proportionally like recurved teeth that are just lining the whole. And yeah, it's also like the bones in their skull are super derived, so they're all in weird positions and doing funky stuff. Yeah, it's a freak show.
Okay.
This is all nothing but fairy stories and fairy tales.
With no fairies. Now, I just want to point out, look, fairy tales by definition are folkloric tales with elements like magic, witches, talking animals, and I'm just going to point out that the Bible has all those things. So
that's true.
If we want to call something a fairy tale, and we're comparing evolutionary biology to the Bible's going to be the one that better fits the definition of fairy tales. So, yeah. Okay, we'll take a drink for that, for Matt doing that much projection.
But yet people will choose to believe it over "Thus saith the Lord."
Okay, this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. Generally speaking, I don't think you can choose your beliefs.
That's fair.
Like, you can...
Well, because like I've talked to too many people who are like now atheists, or even like they were raised Christian and then like left that faith. That like most people I talk to, like they left their faith kicking and screaming, right?
Yeah.
Like if it was just what you wanted to believe, right? I don't think they would have left.
Right. I agree. I mean, like I said earlier, if I believed things because I wanted them to be true, I would believe very different things than what I believe now.
Fair.
Yeah. Because current reality, I think, could be vastly improved in numerous ways.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go.
These are interesting facts that I think we always need to remember.
I like how his straw mans are interesting facts. Okay, Matt. Sure.
Okay.
I'll just take a drink. I'm thirsty. I don't care.
And they are basic truths of science.
You got everything wrong. Nothing you said was a basic truth of science.
Nothing you said was real. Yeah.
Goodness.
Mutations actually cause information to get worse.
You haven't even argued for that.
You haven't demonstrated or argued that or provided a single citation that suggests that. Mutations don't always make things worse. They're mostly neutral, and then sometimes make things better, sometimes make things worse.
Yep.
A mutation itself is defined as an error.
It's defined as a change, right? Error is a loaded word.
Yeah.
So error indicates that there is a way things ought to be, and now you deviated from that, right? So if you make a math error, there's a right answer. You made an error, and now you got the wrong answer. An error, like a typing error, or a typo, right? There's a key you should have hit, and then there's the key you did hit.
Right.
There's no perfect genome that anyone can define as to what your genome should be.
Right.
So to say that it's an error, while it is sometimes referred to that way in literature, it is incorrect in the sense that there's no perfect genome that anyone has been able to find. And also I want to say that Carrie Bronson for $5 says, perhaps Matt ought remove the plank from his worldview eye before talking about the speck of sawdust too small to be a splinter in, quote, evolutionists. Yeah. Also, by the way, guys, I love biblical allusions, so keep those coming. I don't know if you noticed, but I actually pepper a fair few biblical allusions myself into these videos. So
yeah,
so here's the thing, right? The Bible is a foundational text to Western culture's literary tradition.
Absolutely.
And you cannot understand most Western literature without having at least a basic working understanding of the Bible. And that also makes it fun as like a shared cultural heritage to make allusions to, no matter how much you believe or disbelieve in the Bible.
Right.
Plus, it's got some cool stuff in there, too.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
So according to evolution, by all these errors and all these mistakes...
changes.
Again, changes. Yeah.
Somehow we've become human. Somehow...
I mean...
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot more in the gap that you could fill in there within that word somehow, but, I mean, technically, yeah, that is true. I'll take a drink for it.
Yeah.
How we have become better able to survive in this new environment millions of years after the origin of life.
Okay.
One of the most important things to note is that natural selection...
Yeah, look, that's only 3 orders of magnitude, and creations are usually off by 4 to 6. So I'm gonna let it slide.
But we tend to only give 1 order of magnitude.
Okay, but this is the guy who thinks that there's air in space so that the sun can burn oxygen.
That's true. He thinks the sun is on fire, and that's really upsetting.
It really is.
God.
That's an actual, like, JM Truth, the flat earther argument.
Yeah.
It's, guys, if the person I can most easily compare you to is JM Truth, you should probably rethink your life.
Yeah, you need to evaluate some life choices.
Mm-hmm. You've made mistakes somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
May act upon a beneficial mutation, something that would help you survive in a different environment. But at no point in history, or in the present, or even in the future, will you see a group of beneficial mutations that will change an organism into a completely different type of organism.
Well, it depends on what you mean by type, right? So
yeah, because like speciation, I'm not sure you would define speciation as a completely different type of organism.
Well, that's why that's the thing. Like, what does it mean by a completely different type of organism? I can say this. One very famous event of effectively what speciation is occurred in the Lenski long-term experiment, where they got the CYP plus strain that can metabolize citrate in aerobic environments. Because the actual definition for what is Escherichia coli, I think I pronounced it right, E. coli, whatever, is that they cannot metabolize citrate in the presence of oxygen. That's how you tell, or it's one of the ways you tell whether the bacterium that you have is E. coli or not. But one strain in the Lenski long-term experiment has actually managed to start metabolizing citrate in an aerobic environment, which means technically it's now a new species of bacteria. It's no longer E. coli. Now, we're calling it E. coli because, it's a captive population and, this isn't something that was found out in the wild or anything. But if it were, it would not be classified as E. coli. Also, we can get fruit flies to speciate in the course of a few generations just by raising them on different feed. I mean, this is a thing that happens. Organisms in real life adapt to new environments or adapt to new niches within an environment, which ultimately ends up essentially being the same thing. One of my favorite examples is the difference between hawthorn maggots and apple maggots in North America. So you guys may or may not know, but apples are an introduced species in North America. Before the Columbian contact, there were no apples in the Americas. They were in Europe and Asia. But they can grow just fine in North America, so people brought apples over to grow here because they're a good, source of calories and sugar and whatnot.
Also, you can make alcohol out of them.
Very true. That's important. Applejack.
Applejack. Well, just cider, you know.
Okay. Also, don't drink traditional Applejack because there's no way to get rid of the various horrible chemicals that come out of the first bit of distillation.
Yeah.
Traditionally made Applejack is the worst. Anyway, so apples brought over to the New World. Well, a fruit that does exist in the New World for, millions of years is the hawthorn berry. And there's a species of fly that lays its eggs essentially in hawthorn berries, and the maggots are hawthorn worms or hawthorn maggots, and they as they grow, they use the hawthorn berry as their food source. Well, one population of these hawthorn flies ended up starting to use apples. The problem with apples is that they actually go through their whole fruiting and flowering cycle at a different time of year to hawthorn berries. So at first, the flies weren't super well adapted to it. But now, after a few hundred years, actually I think it's only after about 100 years or so, those populations are starting to become separate species because as a result of, yes, mutations, the apple maggot flies have started to breed at a different time of year than their hawthorn flies. Because apples also breed at a different time of year, which means they've stopped interchanging genetic material with the hawthorn maggot flies, and now there's two separate populations that are adapting to separate niches, which effectively amounts to separate environments, in real time, right now, in the United States and Canada.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a thing we have to wonder about. It's happening right now in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
So Vandalian1998 asks, so does that make apples a good invasive species? So one thing is, invasive species usually have to end up being out in the wild, and apples generally don't grow wild in North America, with the possible exception of some crab apples. So I would say that they're not really an invasive species in the same sense that, say, like razorback hogs are in some parts of the Southwest and the South of the United States, or like the Asian carp are all over the place. Because they're not really entering wild ecosystems. They're primarily still restricted to human-maintained areas. They're essentially captive. And the reason for that is because modern apples are a domesticated species. They're not anything like the wild apples. Wild apples are not much bigger than grapes. They're intensely sour. You don't want these things, right? Like, I guess you could cook with them, I guess, maybe. But you would not bite into these things and think, oh, this is a delicious apple. You would spit them out. So for that reason, I would say that they're not really invasive in the same sense. But if you wanted to take a very broad sense of the word invasive, then yeah, you could say that apples are a good invasive species in the sense that they're not really disrupting local ecosystems. Instead, they're just opening up new niches and not heavily competing with native species.
Also, something that blows my mind when we consider Italian food, right? And food staples we think of across Europe is that both potatoes and tomatoes are indigenous to the Americas and did not exist in Europe until the 1600s.
Same thing with peppers.
Yeah.
Yep.
But can you imagine Italian food without tomatoes?
Yeah. Look, a lot of bad stuff happened during the Columbian interchange. However, I can say that world cuisine was greatly improved overall as a result of the introduction of New World ingredients to the Old World and Old World ingredients to the New World.
Agreed.
So, because you know what? I like to do things like put pepper in my rice or put tomato sauce on my bread with cheese.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just things that just wouldn't have happened without that interchange of cultures and crops and livestock.
See, this is how we can be pro cultural exchanges and against colonization.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It turns out that you don't actually need to conquer and enslave people in order to grab some crops from them. Pro tip for the future.
Pro tip.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So we're going to actually start wrapping it up because, I mean, it's about time. I'm sorry for the interruption earlier.
Your internet hates you.
It mostly hates me when I'm streaming is the thing, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
Right? I will go days with no interruptions that I notice, and then I'll go live, and suddenly it'll be like, oh, you just completely lost internet for 5 minutes. I don't know. I'm now on the fanciest, most expensive internet connection that I could reasonably get. After someone gave me a very generous purchase from my Amazon wish list, which is a whole story in itself that I don't want to tell. But I don't know, guys. I just don't know. It is what it is. I'm sorry about that. I wanted to have a hard connection, but right now I can't support that with the modem that's here because the available hard connection is hooked up to the solar panels, which are more important here in Arizona. Because that's causing significant reductions to things like power bills. So,
Yeah.
It is what it is. Maddie, do you have anything you want to shout out on your channel? Anything coming up?
Let's see. Well, tomorrow night is the kind of season finale of Guns, Magic, and Steel, and it's actually confirmed with all players. That's been an adventure. That's not like anybody's fault. Like, Erica and her fiance went and got married, and then
how very power was dare they?
And I get migraines because I'm pregnant. So it's just been, scheduling has been a nightmare, but we are all confirmed for tomorrow night. We're going to do Guns, Magic, and Steel, kind of a season finale, so that I can take some time off for baby before we come back. It's going to be a big old boss fight. It's going to be great. That'll be on Cheshire Vic's channel tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central, so that's 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific.
Yes.
That'll be awesome. And then on my channel, right now, what I'm kind of able to do with like massive changes in my life, I've got some video. I'm basically releasing like a pseudoscience reaction video every Saturday.
Oh, nice.
So the most recent one that is up is I read through an AIG article titled "A Biblical Response to the James Webb Space Telescope." So if you need a good giggle after this, if you've been playing along with the
I hate that title so much.
And are ready for a giggle, go take a look at that. And then set to release this coming Saturday is a video, or I'm responding to Dr. Jason Lyle's basically how he tries to solve the distant starlight problem for young earth creationism, which is, hey, if the universe, if something's a billion light years away and it takes light a billion years to get from there to here, how can we see it if the universe is young?
Yeah.
So
he's got an interesting take on that one.
He's got an interesting take on it. So that'll come out on Saturday. But that's what I got coming up.
All right. Well, so let's take a look. I will also, of course, be there for Guns, Magic, and Steel, because I play Voldrin Glorid, the Dwarf Artificer. So Thursday will be the final episode of the Pastor Can't Understand Things with Pete Greer in a little church, like in, I think, Payson, Arizona, not all that far from me. Well, not all that far by, like, North American standards, super far away by European standards. So, because, look, North America is on just an entirely different scale than Europe. So if you're watching from Europe, we just have different definitions for what's far away. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's Thursday. Saturday, I don't want to predict. It'll be something, but it's a little bit up in the air, as it has been for the past few weeks, because, well, the past few weeks have been kind of rough. So, yeah. And they've been rough for more people than just me. So we'll see what's up. Let's see. Tuesday, the 26th, currently the plan is that we're going to have Jackson with Jackson Wheat, talking about Dr. Charles Jackson and his...
AKA Bad Jackson.
Right, Bad Jackson, or sometimes Dr. Jackson, although eventually I think Jackson Wheat might end up with that PhD on his name, so there might be more than one Dr. Jackson, to stop calling him that. But anyway, that's going to be Tuesday. Thursday, I think I'm going to start my 2-part video series about Cindy Lincoln and her take on stratigraphy. Now, I want to say, look, Cindy is a friend of mine. I love Cindy. I think we all know this. I'm very supportive of Cindy in terms of her attempts to get justice from her abusive former partner, her attempts to do things like get support from other Christians. I'm supportive of that. However, her take on stratigraphy, as evidenced by her own video, is that she feels like she can just kind of eyeball pictures of rocks and then just declare that they were caused by a flood. And so I took about an hour and a half to be like, yeah, no, you can't just do that. That's not how that works. For reasons, like an hour and a half worth of reasons. So that's going to be coming up. If you want to watch it now, again, you can join the Patreon or the channel membership, and it'll be right there for you. So, but I think that's as far ahead as I really want to look, is up to the 28th. guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. I'm sorry this has been such chaos. And I hope that I'll see you tomorrow and Thursday and Saturday and all the other days. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Benthoven, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Landon Knoll, Yepetis, Maddie Babbity, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if the annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.